All right, Stephen, I'm happy to have you today. We're talking a little RevOps. We're going to talk about a little issue we see a lot, and that is it's kind of synonymous with the whole marketing versus sales debate, which is kind of the MQL versus SQL debate. And I don't even know if it's like really that much of a debate. I think it's kind of something marketing obviously wants to feel justified with. Anytime they get somebody to fill out any sort of form whatsoever, they want to consider them a marketing qualified lead. However, sales teams don't necessarily consider a quality lead, marketing or not, uh, to be someone who simply filled out a form to get an ebook at some point, who has no buying power, no interest in buying. And so I want to talk about this relationship between SQLs and MQLs. And I'll just kind of start off my thesis that I feel like most of the time only SQLs matter. What say you, Stephen Thiel?
I don't disagree. MQLs have their place, but when the focus is on MQLs entirely, that's when things start to kind of fall off the tracks. I think there's often like a mirage. I think around MQLs, they don't signal intent or quality. They just signal interest, and so they have their place internally. Say if you want to use them to like feed into ad networks to at least guide your ads towards the type of leads that might go from MQL to SQL to opportunity. But when the focus just ends up on MQLs and that's what marketing is tracking, that's when I think things start to kind of fall off a little bit, and where MQLs becomes very misleading as a metric that you should be tracking.
I would even say that MQLs, like they create more issues than they do solutions, right? Because the whole point of RevOps, we want marketing and sales on the same page. We want everyone rowing in the same direction. We don't want anyone to have an out. We don't want everyone having to justify their existence. And so if marketing is going into an engagement or a campaign and they have, they're setting things up so you have a super top of funnel MQL, again, a lot of times that's just trying to justify the existence. When if we're going for the end goal, which is revenue, that's just an area that marketing should cede to sales and say, hey, we actually need to be responsible for getting SQLs. And listen, I'm not naive to the fact that MQLs can, when properly nurtured, turn into SQLs, but I still think that's more of a fairy tale that marketing made up than an actual reality we see on the ground with B2B clients every single day. So, how can marketing teams kind of reconfigure almost everything they've tried to do over the past, I don't know, lifetime in terms of justifying their existence with MQLs and start really thinking about how to drive more SQLs for their sales teams?
Yeah, I think that it's definitely a mindset shift. Like cool, high MQL volume, which is something that teams have always been high fiving over in the past. Doesn't always mean high revenue. I think my focus and where our focus tends to be more is SQL velocity and not just getting SQLs in the pipeline, but then trying to measuring how quickly they move through that pipeline, which gives you a better signal of operational efficiency. I think focusing more on long term, the strategy benefits the marketing teams more and more and more because as they continue to focus more on SQLs, and then they can pass those SQL intent signals back into any advertising platforms that they're using, it makes their life a lot easier because Google, Meta, LinkedIn, they're all going to start auto optimizing your ads towards the type of leads that have a higher likelihood of turning into an SQL and then an opportunity. But you do need that baseline structure. But shifting that mindset from MQL to SQL offers a great opportunity to get internal alignment that maybe wasn't there in the past, and get marketing and sales kind of speaking the same language. And once that bias over MQL SQL is removed, you can then really start diving into the things that matter, like lead scoring. How do we reduce manual data entry? Like what is our ideal ICP, and what are the type of what type of SQLs fit into those different persona models. So moving past this MQL discussion opens up that opportunity to really shift your whole internal operation in a way that's going to drive a lot more revenue long term.
And I think that's part of why so many, artists formerly known as B2B marketing agencies have, uh, you know, really adopted this idea of RevOps because we know, right? Like we know MQLs are like lifesavers when nothing else is working. We can go, oh, look at all those people who use that cool gated calculator we put on the website. Oh yeah, everything we're doing is great. And I think, to your point, if we can continue to get more people who, let's say, were raised in the marketing ecosystem more focused on, hey, how do we actually get the right message to the right customer at the right time and get them in the funnel as an SQL, then, that whole vibe shift, for lack of a better way of saying it, like that's what really needs to be adopted, and but it's hard, right? Because look, SQL has starts with sales, MQL starts with marketing, and so everyone who either comes up in marketing or sales looks at it two different ways, and it's just not. I mean, this is exactly what we're trying to tear down, right? We want everyone to be focused on sales qualified leads, and that marketing should be serving that. So if I'm a marketing leader and I'm hearing this, I'm getting a little mad right now, and I don't like what Austin and Steven are saying. What do I need to do to start evolving my way of thinking to get into much more of a RevOps mentality and start focusing a lot more on SQLs?
Yeah, I think what I like to do and what I've seen work in the past is when we not just focusing on say SQL, but like introducing SQL's velocity to the equation, then kind of puts it on marketing and sales because then that's not just a metric that marketing owns, and it's not just a metric that that sales owns. By making it more of like a cross-functional performance metric, the marketing team then can get behind generating those leads, but then they need the sales team to move them to the pipeline. So then it's something they're owning together, they're working on together, and it drives I think more of that operational change that sometimes is required when you're trying to pivot from an MQL strategy, lead gen strategy, to more of that SQL lead gen strategy. But it does require a little bit of a shift in mindset, but it opens up the opportunity for conversations that probably weren't being had in the past, and more of that RevOps mindset. And I think long term for marketers, it makes it much easier for them to prove like the value behind the efforts that are going in, because no marketer wants to just be throwing money at the wall and seeing and hoping something's going to stick. Like we all want to track it, we want to know what's working. Is Meta working? Is LinkedIn working? Is organic working? Or is call tracking? Like, what's actually driving for us so that we can invest more in those areas? But when we just focus on MQLs, it's very difficult to invest in those areas because we can't actually prove, the true ROI behind our efforts.
Yeah, I think it's a nomenclature issue. The more I'm thinking about it, right? I think there's nothing that drives salespeople more crazy than MQLs, and there's nothing that makes marketers feel less insecure than knowing that only something called sales qualified leads matter. What if we went with like actual qualified leads? That was actually. How about PQLs and AQLs? Possible qualified leads and actual qualified leads, because I think to your point, um, in a without any past history or industry influence, I think most people really want actual qualified leads for their company, right? And anything that they can do to support that is something that they would galvanize towards. And perhaps this whole debate all comes down to our stupid wording, or traditional wording, if we are being more fair. All right. So what else? What else do RevOps leaders need to know about how to handle SQLs and MQLs, or some of the people are saying now AQLs and PQLs?
Yeah, I mean, I think just having those discussions internally, aligning on what, just set the criteria for it. What is, if we're using whatever nomenclature you're going to use, like what is the criteria for it? What actually gets you from point A to point B? And to your point, once everyone is aligned on that, it makes all the other puzzle pieces much easier to fall into place. Because more often than not, like we'll go into these engagements and their alignment isn't there, and no one actually knows what what criteria fits an MQL or an SQL, whatever you want to call it. once you get that criteria in place, it makes all the other puzzle pieces, they'll fall into place much easier. And honestly, it drives a lot more satisfaction long term once you can actually start like rowing in that same direction and focusing your energy on what grows the business.
There you have it. The AQL revolution starts today. Uh, Awesome. Thanks so much, Stephen. I appreciate it. Marketers, sales folks, RevOps folks, start rowing in the same direction. Only SQLs matter. We all know it. And if it's hard to come to terms with, just change to AQL. It'll make you feel better. Thanks, everyone. That's it for today. If you like what you see, give us a thumbs up and make sure you hit subscribe so you can see our latest videos as soon as they drop. We really appreciate you watching. See you next time.